Chapter 15, Bert is arrested. Wait a minute. You know, that last chapter, I might have said it was chapter 15, but I think it was chapter 14. Anyway, as long as you read The Rights of a Human first, now you're ready to read Bert is arrested. Page 123. The bell sounded through the entire house. Martin covered his ears as if he couldn't endure the clamor. Bert said defiantly, "We'll not go to the door." Motionless, the three sat in silence. On and on the ringing continued until Laura thought the bell must break. Would their unwanted visitor never go away? Why don't they just put Martin under the floor? Moving cautiously, Bert rolled back the carpet and motioned Martin into the hole in the floor. Laura found she was still clutching Uncle Tom's cabin. If the slave catchers saw it, they'd be even more sure that a runaway was hidden in the house. Hastily, she handed it to Martin before Bert slid the trap door into place. A shout came from the front steps. "We know you're in there. Open the door." "You'll have to let them in," Laura whispered to Bert. "I'll count to 10, came the deep voice from the porch. "If you aren't here, we'll break in." "Hurry," urged Laura. Bert was tugging at the carpet. Wait till I get this straight. Laura jumped up and helped him, then recovered her sewing and sat tensely, waiting. Bert left the room, but returned immediately, saying, "I'll have to take the lamp so I can see who's there." "Excuse me." "All right." Laura dropped her sewing. "I'm coming with you." They descended the stairs with Bert ahead carrying the lamp. With every step, the counting on the porch came more clearly to their ears. 6, 7, "We're coming," shouted Bert. "Who's there?" The counting stopped. "Deputy Smith," came the answer. "Open up, Bert. I have a warrant for your arrest." "I haven't done anything wrong." "You can explain that. You're wanted for questioning." Laura heard another voice, one that was painfully familiar. "Ugh, don't tell me." "Don't argue with him. Out of my way and I'll push in the door." The voice belonged to Walt, of course. She might have known he'd be behind this. Bert unlocked the door and flung it open. "What's the idea?" he began, but at once the two men pushed into the hallway. Deputy Smith was apologetic. "We saw your carriage pick up the slave this afternoon. Walt here, of course, convinced the judge you ought to be questioned. He showed Bert the warrant." "I had nothing to do with that," Bert said. "I left the carriage on Corner Street and someone helped himself to it." "You'll have to come along anyway," the deputy insisted. "Tomorrow will be time enough, won't it?" asked Bert. "I don't want to leave my sister here alone." "She's big enough to look after herself," Walt interrupted. God, I cannot stand him. Deputy Smith looked at Laura, who stood in the shadows behind Bert. You'll be safe enough, Miss Eastman. No one will bother you. I'll guarantee that. I'm sorry, Bert. You'll have to come with us." He seemed to find his duty unpleasant. Bert was silent. Then his shoulders slumped, and Laura knew he had given up. "I'll get my coat," he said. Laura followed him into the kitchen, where his coat hung on a peg, hoping for a word alone with him, but Walt was right on their heels. Of course he was. Ugh. "Have to keep an eye on this fella," said Walt, "so he doesn't try to run out the back door." Walt is so mean. Before he left, Bert stopped in the front hall. "Lock the door, Laura," he advised, "and don't let anyone in. Pa and Abby will be home by morning." "I'll be all right." Laura's mouth was dry, and it was difficult to talk. After they had gone, she bolted the door, lamp in hand. She climbed back to the bedroom, quickly rolled back the carpet, and lifted the trap door. "Bert's gone," she told Martin. They had a warrant to take him in for questioning. Martin's eyes looked up at her with a mute appeal. Never before had she seen such an expression of despair. He climbed out and carefully replaced the trap door and carpet. "I'll be going," he said. "You can't. You don't know the way." "You can tell me." Laura shook her head. You'd never find the place alone. You'll just have to wait until tomorrow. Pa will be home, and then he'll know what to do. But tonight the boat's coming, and my pappy is waiting. I know. Laura could understand his impatience and longing. Your uncle's coming, Martin reminded her. The one who doesn't believe in helping slaves get away? I'll find the river, don't you worry. Laura wondered what Uncle Daniel would do if he found out that they were hiding an escaped slave. He would never forgive Pa, and he might go straight to the sheriff. I have to leave, Martin sounded desperate. I'd rather die than be sent back to my master. Laura saw the anguish in his face and knew suddenly that it was up to her now. She might try to take him herself. You're right, Martin, she said slowly. You'll have to leave tonight, but you can't go alone. You'd get lost, and you'd never get to the house on the river in time. I'm going with you. Martin's face showed such surprise that Laura almost laughed. I can do it, she said stoutly. I know how to get to Tryon's house. She began to make plans. We won't go on the road. The slave catchers will be out tonight, especially now that George, that other slave, has escaped. Martin was mute, staring at her as if trying to decide if she had lost her mind. We'll go through the woods, Laura said. We'll stay as close to the road as we dare, so as not to get lost. You'll need a warm jacket. I'll see if Bert has one that will fit you. I don't want you to get in trouble, Miss Laura. Martin looked more worried than at any time since she had first seen him. You don't need to worry about me, said Laura. I'm not like some girls who have never done anything but cook and sew and play on the piano. My mother used to say I was a tomboy. I used to know every nut tree and berry patch for miles around. She looked down at her long dress and noticed a three-cornered hole in the skirt where a thorny bush in the woods had caught it. All at once, she realized what a difficult task lay ahead. She remembered how hard it had been to walk in her long skirts up the overgrown lane to Tryon's Folly by daylight. Oh, that would be hard, walking through the woods, those skirts on they used to wear. Whew. How could she expect to travel more than a mile around the edge of Lewiston all the way to the river at night? She couldn't do it, and yet she had to. I know what I'll do, she declared. I'll wear a pair of Bert's pants. Taking the lamp with her, she ran to her brother's room, where a thorough search of the wardrobe and chest of drawers turned up an old brown shirt that was slightly large for her, plus Bert's Sunday pants and his school pants. Both were much too large, and besides, this trip through the woods and Tryon's cellars would ruin them. Her brother's work pants were downstairs in the shed, but she knew they were no smaller than his good trousers. It wouldn't help to wear pants that would trip her up just as her skirts would. Why couldn't she have grown up as fast as Bert? By rights, she should be bigger than he. Still carrying the lamp, she entered the small attic that opened off Bert's room. Several boxes and trunks were stored under the slanting roof. In the third box she opened, she found exactly what she needed: Bert's clothes. Bert's clothes he'd worn as a boy, a pair of black pants and a jacket. She also took out a coat that would fit Martin and a worn cap. Her own shoes would have to do. She'd put on her sturdiest pair. Back in Bert's room, she proceeded to dress in his old clothes, buttoning the jacket over Bert's brown shirt for warmth. For a final touch, she set his cap at a jaunty angle and tucked her long hair under it. A glance in the mirror showed her a mischievous face with big, excited eyes. She felt more alive than she had for years. When she appeared in the doorway to her room, she was satisfied to see Martin's look of surprise and to hear the ring of truth in his voice as he said, "For a minute, I thought you were a boy." Time began to race. The moon was dropping lower in the sky, and as soon as it was out of sight, they must be ready to leave. Laura filled the lantern with potter's oil and stuffed several lucifers into a pocket of the jacket. Then, leaving a lamp burning on her dresser, she and Martin hurried from room to room, looking out of the windows on all sides of the house to see if anyone was lurking in the shadows. Just as she had begun to hope, that the slave catchers had stopped watching the house, Martin called out softly from her parents' room. She reached the front window in time to see a man saunter past the road. Even without the moon's light, she could see that his head was turned toward the house. A few minutes later, he came back again, walking in the same measured way. "We'll have to watch him and leave the moment he's out of sight," said Laura. Putting out the light, she led the way down the stairs in the dark. In the pitch-black kitchen, she stumbled against a chair. If she couldn't find her way across her own kitchen, how could she make her way through the woods she had not been in for 4 years? Quietly, she opened the back door. "Stay close to me," she whispered to Martin. "We'll head for that tree." She pointed to a large maple that stood halfway between the house and the woods. "If anyone shouts at us, just keep going. Never mind about me, just run." She made a slow, careful survey of the yard. Nothing moved, and there was no sound. Someone could be hiding in the orchard to the right of the yard, or in the woods toward which she planned to run. But that was a chance she would have to take. "Do you see anyone?" she asked. "No," answered Martin. "Keep watching while I look for our sentry." She ran to the parlor and waited until the man stalked by and disappeared to the east. She raced back to the kitchen. "Now!" she panted. Laura sprinted across the lawn, and Martin followed her. Can't wait to see what happens.